Tonight on EIV News at 9, details about the biggest youth-led protest since the Vietnam War.
A Massachusetts senator voices support for student activists at a gun control rally.
And a City Hall scandal has come to an end. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to EIV News at 9. I'm Juliana Bruno.
And I'm Max Sedford. We begin with tonight's top stories.
Hundreds of thousands of protesters around the country gathered to make their voices heard on gun control last Saturday. The March for Our Lives was organized by the survivors of the Parkland High School shooting. It was the largest youth-led protest in the nation's capital since the Vietnam War. The Parkland students who spoke at the rally said their goal was to mobilize young voters in the next election. Higher turnout, they said, could show a desire for gun control legislation.
Boston held a sister march that began at Madison Park High School in Roxbury and made its way to the Boston Common. The rally in the Common was attended by tens of thousands. Senator Elizabeth Warren spoke at the Reggie Lewis Center before the march began. Warren praised the students for their participation and proclaimed that the March for Our Lives was what, quote, democracy looks like, end quote. She acknowledged that while many of the students in attendance were too young to vote, they could still work on campaigns. Warren added that, quote, we're a lot closer to gun control today than we were yesterday, end quote. We'll have more on the Boston March later in the show.
Two City Hall aides accused of extorting the Boston Calling Musical Festival will return to work after their charges were dropped earlier this week. Kenneth Brissett and Timothy Sullivan were accused of pressuring the festival's organizers into hiring unnecessary union workers in 2014. Judge Leo T. Sorokin dropped the case after determining that the prosecutor's evidence did not meet the legal standard for conviction. Mayor Marty Walsh said he is, quote, glad the matter is resolved, end quote. A spokesman for Walsh would not comment on the possibility of an appeal by prosecutors.
One person was killed and 3 others were injured, including 2 firefighters after an explosion in Ayer. Ayer police and firefighters responded to a report of an explosion at a furnace equipment facility around 5 p.m. last Friday. According to a statement put out after an investigation, the cause of the explosion appears to be equipment malfunction. The man who died was identified to be in his 50s. He and another injured worker were rushed to the hospital following the blast. The investigation into the cause of the explosion is still underway and is being conducted by the district attorney's office.
On Wednesday, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg broke his silence on the data breach involving the political consulting firm Cambridge Analytica. Zuckerberg said, quote, this was a breach of trust between Alexander Kogan, Cambridge Analytica, and Facebook. But it was also a breach of trust between Facebook and the people who share their data with us and expect us to protect it, end quote. Lawmakers in Washington continue to pressure Zuckerberg to testify in front of Congress. According to CBS Boston, Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal said, quote, Zuckerberg ought to be subpoenaed to testify if he won't do it voluntarily, end quote. Other lawmakers are calling for greater regulations on large tech companies.
Now for the latest political news, we turn to our politics correspondent, Arasha Lalani.
Thanks, Max. Pulse nightclub's gunman Omar Mateen and his case are being reevaluated after his father, Siddiqui Mateen, was revealed to be an FBI informant. Siddiqui Mateen was an FBI informant from 2005 to 2016. He is currently under criminal investigation for transferring money to Turkey and Afghanistan after documents were found on his home on the day of the Pulse attack. Siddiqui Mateen told CNN he was shocked to learn of his son's actions that night, adding he didn't notice any irregular or emotional behavior by his son. He also stated that Omar's act, quote, was a terror act, but as far as him being a terrorist, he's not aware, unquote. At the Generation Next Summit for Millennials, President Donald Trump answered the question, what advice would he give to a 25-year-old of himself, knowing what he knows today? Trump's answer? Quote, don't run for president, unquote. Trump indicated that before he ran for office, he got great publicity. While Trump's honesty elicited laughter from the audience, the young entrepreneurs of the future may have been affected by his words. President Donald Trump's partner, First Lady Melania Trump, honored 10 women at the State Department's International Women of Courage Awards ceremony on Friday. The honorees included Sister Maria Elena Barini, who provided shelter and refuge to thousands of internally displaced people, and Alika Khalifa Shakle, who risked her life to save over 58 Iraqi military cadets ambushed by ISIS. According to organizers, all honorees have shown courage and leadership in their advocacy for human rights and empowerment at their own risk. Trump recognized these women as, quote, the heroes who walk among us all, end quote. That's all I have for this week. Back to you, Max.
Thanks, Arasha. Maine's House of Representatives overrode their governor's veto of a bill that would preserve Obama-era health protections for women. According to Boston.com, the bill would require health insurance plans in the state to cover recommended immunizations, preventative care, and screenings, among other services. Governor Paul LePage's reasons for the veto? He said that he didn't want to sign into law the same elements that made Obama's law a, quote, disaster, end quote.
A Quincy woman who was pulled from a house fire on Harvard Street died from her injuries yesterday. A pet was also sadly lost in the blaze. The woman lived on the first floor of the home. Thankfully, a family on the second floor managed to escape. At this time, the Quincy Fire Department does not know how the fire began.
Lawmakers recently filed legislation that would close the loophole that allows for police officers to claim sexual conduct with those in their custody is consensual. Democratic Representative Kay Kahn and Marjorie Decker were inspired to file the bill after 2 New York City police officers were charged with kidnapping and raping a woman in their custody in October. This caused the state to pass a proposal that calls for the same actions in Kahn and Decker's proposal. Currently, Massachusetts law does not allow for police officers to engage in sexual activity with inmates. However, the 2 representatives claim that this law allows for ambiguity in the actions of on-duty officers.
Walgreens is settling a lawsuit that alleges it overcharged Massachusetts state workers for prescriptions. Overcharging on prescriptions happened in Walgreens across the state, according to the lawsuit. The settlement, according to the state attorney general, means the company will not profit from the overcharging. Additionally, Walgreens pledged to contribute towards programs that fight the opioid epidemic and implement procedures to prevent future overcharging. Despite the settlement, the company still denies any wrongdoing.
When we come back, a teenage cyclist injured following a local hit and run. Welcome back. We're now joined in studio by our international correspondent, Isha Marathe.
More than 100 Nigerian schoolgirls are back with their families 4 days after being freed. The students were kidnapped in February from a Nigerian boarding school in the town of Dachi. The kidnapping was undertaken by a jihadist group, Boko Haram, Nigerian authorities say. 110 girls were taken, 5 did not survive, and 1 other who's Christian and refused to convert to Islam is still being held. A Nigerian official said, quote, the Buhari administration will not relent in efforts to bring her safely back home to her parents, end quote. The abductees were released on the side of the road 5 weeks after being taken, authorities say. The Nigerian government denied allegations that Boko Haram was paid ransom for the girls' return. A fire blazed through a Siberian mall yesterday, killing 37 people with at least 60 still missing. The flames started in the upper level of the shopping center in the Siberian coal mining city of Kemerovo. Most of the victims were stuck in the movie theaters, authorities say. Of the 60 still missing, 41 are children. Emergency operatives have not been able to reach one of the cinema halls due to danger of the building collapsing. A team of 660 emergency personnel remains working on the rescue effort. The cause of the fire remains unknown, but investigations are ongoing. Meanwhile, leaders from all over the world offered condolences on social media. Syrian government forces are close to winning the long battle in eastern Ghouta as they push out the rebel-led groups from the area. Backed by Russian forces, the Syrian military launched a siege on eastern Ghouta on February 18th. The violent operation killed 1,500 people and injured over 5,000. Over 5,000 Syrians have been evacuated from the area so far. Hazem al-Shami, an evacuee, said, quote, we will leave Ghouta, but one day we will return. They have managed to silence the revolution, but it will never die, end quote. A safe place for the refugees is yet to be found. The death toll in the 7-year Syrian civil war has reached hundreds of thousands, UN officials say.
Thanks, Isha. Police in Cambridge are searching for a driver involved in a hit and run last Friday. Authorities say a silver Prius hit a 14-year-old boy on a bicycle along Putnam Avenue. The boy says the driver did not stop and immediately left the scene. He was taken to the hospital for minor injuries, including a concussion. According to security camera footage, the driver returned to the scene of the crime a few minutes later, but did not stop to help.
An audit of Massachusetts State Police has found alleged overtime abuse. Officials say some officers have been suspended without pay and 9 others retired following the audit. The audit found possible cases of officers holding trooper, sergeant, and lieutenant ranks being paid overtime for shifts they did not work.
Now for the latest entertainment news, we go to correspondent Jonah Pushkar.
During this past Saturday's March for Our Lives, Sir Paul McCartney was found participating in the New York City branch of the event. McCartney told reporters that one of his best friends was killed in gun violence, so it's important to him. He was speaking in reference to John Lennon, his former bandmate, who was shot and killed 37 years ago near where McCartney was marching. It was recently announced that Netflix has been banned from competing in the Cannes Film Festival. According to organizers, this is due to the streaming giant's refusal to release its films in theaters. Starting with this year's Cannes Festival, which takes place in May, films screened for competition will need a French theatrical release. Festival reps stated that Netflix is still allowed to screen films at Cannes, but they will not be eligible for awards. Actors Neil Patrick Harris and Kristen Bell have been showing their support for the recently released film Love, Simon. The stars were so moved by the film's pro-LGBT message that they bought out screenings so moviegoers could see the films for free. Harris's sponsored screenings will be in his hometown of Albuquerque, New Mexico, while Bell's will be in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's all I have for this week. Back to you at the desk.
Thank you, Jonah. EIV News reporter Maya Huter spoke with protesters at this weekend's March for Life in Boston. Here's what they had to say.
Here at the Boston Common, thousands are rallying in support of gun control following the mass shooting in Parkland, Florida last month. The March for Our Lives Boston is one of over 800 sibling marches taking place across the world in support of the monumental youth-led rally in Washington, D.C. today. An estimated 50,000 people participated in Boston's demonstration. Speakers discussed issues of gun violence both in schools and in the streets of Massachusetts. Mansfield Middle School student Emma Baldridge attended the rally in support of gun control measures that better assure student safety.
As part of the student body, that's just really hits me right in the heart, because knowing, waking up in the morning and going to the bus, I'm thinking about the possibilities, and I'm low-key scared, and it's not a feeling that a child my age should have to go through.
New England Academy student Wyatt Newport recognized the need for changes in America.
If you look at all the other first world countries, they don't even have this problem. This is an American problem, and we need to change that.
Rally-goers of all ages came out to show solidarity and support for the Never Again movement. Deb Weibel voiced her pride in the youth for their initiative in fighting lawmakers on this issue.
We're so in support of these kids and what they're doing. They're going to change the world.
Student Eras Hatch agreed.
The stereotype about the youth is that we're young and stupid, that we don't know what we're doing. That we know what we're doing.
Reporting for EIV News in Boston, I'm Maya Huter.
Thank you, Maya. Now let's check in with sports correspondent Michael Cerullo.
Sale was hit by a line drive during the first inning of Saturday's spring training game. Sale immediately grabbed his knee and fell to the ground while Astros third baseman J.D. Davis ran to first base. The Red Sox pitcher was then pulled from the game to have his leg examined. Results of that examination show a bruise where the ball hit, but no other serious injuries. The Red Sox went on to defeat the defending World Series champions by a score of 6-0. Sale is expected to return to the mound in time for the Boston season opener Thursday against the Tampa Bay Rays. Celtics All-Star Kyrie Irving is not expected to return to the court for another 3 to 6 weeks, ESPN reports. Irving underwent a minimally invasive surgical procedure Saturday to remove a wire from his left knee. The Celtics say that the wire was placed in Irving's knee to repair a fractured patella from the 2015 NBA Finals. Irving is the third Celtics player to undergo surgery in the past 2 weeks and one of 5 benched for the Celtics. The Boston team has played without Kyrie Irving, Daniel Theis, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, and Gordon Hayward for the past 5 games. The Boston Bruins came back from a 2-point deficit to defeat the Dallas Stars 3-2 Friday night. The Stars got off to an early lead with goals by Issa Lindell and Jamie Benn during the first 2 periods. Down 2-0, Bruins player Brad Marchand and Tim Schaller both scored during the final period to tie up the game. The Bruins' right wing David Pastrnak broke the tie with just over 11 seconds left in the game to secure the victory for Boston. The Bruins will take the ice next against the Winnipeg Jets Tuesday at 8. That's all I have for sports this week. Back to you, Max.
Thanks, Michael. A man's clothes became stuck in an MBTA escalator, resulting in serious injury. The accident occurred last Saturday at the Malden Center Orange Line stop. The man in his 30s was alert when the paramedics took him to the hospital. Transit police are currently investigating the incident. A spokesman for the MBTA told the Boston Globe that it was unclear, quote, why the man fell, end quote.
When we come back, Christine Hatcham will give us this week's weather report. Stick around.
Welcome back. We're now joined in studio by Christine Hatcham for a look at this at the weather this week.
Thanks, guys. The weather is still cold as the temperature tonight will be 29 degrees. When will the spring weather finally come? Well, speaking of wanting warmer weather, tomorrow has a high of 46 and a low of 33 and sunny skies. Still not ideal, but at least it's above freezing. Wednesday, skies will be cloudy with temperatures being fairly similar to Tuesday with a high of 47 and a low of 38. Thursday is expected to have AM showers, then rain again later at night. The high is 51 with a low of 46. At least it'll be warmer. Friday is nearly hitting 60 degrees with a high of 58. Unfortunately, there is a 60% chance of rain and the low is 42. But on the bright side, the days are getting longer with the sunset being as late as 7:07. Lastly, the rain seeps into Saturday. There's a 60% chance of precipitation. The temperatures are expected to have a high of 49 and a low of 38. That's all I have for weather. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thanks, Christine. That's all the time we have for tonight. For more stories, visit eivnews.com and follow us on Twitter. I'm Juliana Bruno.
And I'm Max Sedford. Thanks for watching.